we would like to caution you about viewing this piece. It is not a pretty sight at all, so please, those of you, be forewarned.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Introducing the challenger from parts unknown.
Don't let me go white ghetto on your fucking ass. You make a fool of me, I will get you. It will be a blood match with chairs.
I'm the only one who sounds like a man who knows what to say in the ring.
We're on the air.
That's right.
Here we are.
We're back.
From the John Lovitz Comedy Club at City Walk at Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. It's almost live from Parts Unknown. Hooray! Another great week. I'm your host and moderator, Broadway Danny Wolf, joined tonight by our other hosts, Dan Farron.
Good to be here.
Joey Gaynor.
Good to be here.
And inconspicuous by his absence tonight, Ken Napzok on special assignment.
Well, I'll tell you right now that Spoiler 58 had nothing to do with that.
Is he here? There he is. I'm pointing right there.
Right there.
One of our other hosts, let's say hi to that's Spoiler 58 in the
Spoiler
house.
58.
Nice to see the spoiler, always here.
His son, Spoiler 59, is currently wrestling in St. Louis tonight with Sailor Art Thomas IV. They're going for the Intercontinental Mental Belt.
Well, speaking of mental,
Yeah.
we have a good show tonight. A special hour
Speaking of mental, look
on
at these doodles.
on something we all
Speaking
were.
of mental, look at his doodles. That's
What you do when you're on hold. We were very lucky back about 20 years ago to be involved in an independent wrestling promotion here in Los Angeles called Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. Joey's got one of our billboards, our posters. It was the in thing to do. Let me go down here behind her.
It's right there.
Not only did we have outlandish characters, and we're going to talk about some of them tonight, we had some of the best and most amazing wrestling talent and standing room only.
Santiago con presidente.
We had-
Santiago con presidente democratísimo.
We had standing room only crowds at a club in Hollywood, California called Moguls.
Moguls,
And we
baby.
were the wrestling promotion, the indie in Los Angeles for quite a few
right.
years, and we were all involved. I was a ring announcer and announcer. Joey was a manager.
I was a manager, and I actually participated in the ring twice.
Dan was a referee,
I was a
and
referee.
promoter.
I was
Matchmaker.
commissioner. I was a matchmaker, a promoter. I actually wrestled also, and I stole as much money as I possibly could.
And of course, Eric Hayden was involved. And
That's why Eric's not here
and
tonight.
Eric lost as much money as he possibly could. So.
Well, the thing I'll
much
tell
more
you
did
about it. We'll talk about Incredibly Strange. We have some callers, some personalities that were involved with Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling calling in tonight, including Johnny Legend, the self-made man, the $1 Million Maniac, will be calling in. Johnny was really the promoter of Incredibly Strange
Johnny
Rock
was
and
the
Wrestling.
guy. Where it came
Johnny
from.
was the first. We did the Hollywood wrestling thing. That was
First.
we started there.
We did
and then
Hollywood heavyweight wrestling.
Hollywood heavyweight
in
wrestling.
January 1990. The reason
Right.
that came up was because California was you had to have a license to promote wrestling at that time. Up until January of 1990, we were the very first independent company to promote without a license.
Yeah.
In early January 1990, we did a show that was kind of what the Incredibly Strange would turn into. It had some music. L7 performed, and we also had a lot of wrestling. We were very lucky to include some guys who went on to become very big names. Conan, a very young 16-year-old Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yep.
And also
Eddie Guerrero, I think. Did he work with us?
did a
little
show.
bit? He did a show with us.
I'm not sure
Mondo
about that
Guerrero,
one.
Eddie, yes.
Mondo
Mondo.
did a show for the Chavo did a show with us, and then also the gentleman Psychosis.
Yes.
Also under a different name because all the names were
I
always
look
changed.
like I weigh 6'10". What's going on?
Because you do.
Well, let's talk about Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. Again, the wrestling was top notch. We had some of the best lucha
Yeah.
and independent
Well,
wrestlers in Los Angeles.
That was the key because it was wrestling for people who didn't watch wrestling.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was that sometimes you would have these little gag matches and whatever and stuff would happen, and people were very surprised by that when they would see matches with really good independent talent like Supreme, like Chaos. Actually, up in San Francisco, the gentleman who eventually became Matt Hyson, who was Spike Dudley, Little Spike Dudley, worked one of the shows up there, and several other people did. And there's a couple people calling in the standing who'll probably be able to fill some more blanks in for us. But the legacy of Hollywood heavyweight wrestling turned into Incredibly Strange Wrestling, where we just basically took anything that made absolutely any kind of sense whatsoever and threw it out the window.
But again, holding it really smack dab in the middle of Hollywood. It was a club called Moguls on Hollywood
were packed every show.
Schrader and Hollywood Boulevard. Every show was standing room only. Every show, the fire marshals came and tried to shut us down. I have a list here. I wrote down some of the names of the wrestlers we had in Incredibly Strange, and I think people always got a kick out of some of our characters. So I'm gonna go through a list.
Pretty
we had the HIV Kid. We had El Irregulario.
He had a
Remember
note
during
from
his match?
Yeah, he had a note from the doctor so he could stop the match to use the bathroom.
And then would come back with toilet paper hanging out of his trunk. We had Harley Racist.
Harley Racist.
Now, we had a couple tag teams. One was the Colostomy Brothers, Shitbag Shannon and Slow Drip Dominguez. That was the Colostomy
There's a lot of
Brothers.
We also
alliteration.
had Killer Cruz, Tex Travolta, La Femme Nikita Koloff, Go-Go Gomez, Cletus the Fetus,
No, I got here. Wait, let me go. We had the Ku Klux Clowns.
the Ku Klux
Right.
Clowns.
We had
right.
Los Hobos, which
Los
was
Hobos
Backpack Mac and Panhandle Randall. We had El Asesino Postal,
That
which
was
was
it,
the Postal
the Postal
Assassin.
Assassin.
The one thing I remember about the Postal Assassin, what was great about him was one time we would do. He came out with like a because the postal shooting at the post office was all
Very
the rage.
hot at
really
the time.
hot,
It was
yeah.
the rage at the time.
So I mean that was
All
one of
the
the things.
kids were doing
the
it.
thing to remember about the funny thing about Incredibly. Oh, I thought I heard a gun cock.
think that was spoiler
there we go.
58.
There he is. The thing to remember about Incredibly Strange that was very interesting was it was very
Tito
polarizing.
Bravo.
People either loved it or people who were wrestling fans, some wrestling fans really hated it. In fact, in the Pro Wrestling Observer poll in the 1990s, it was picked as worst promotion and was picked by worst promotion by mostly people who
That's right.
never saw it because it wasn't available anywhere. But just from reading about it, they were horrified.
Here, some of the other names, we had Lucky Pierre. We had Mary Tyler Moron. We had Juventud Gonorrhea.
Juventud
Now,
Gonorrhea.
two of our top female wrestlers, we had Tammy Tampon. She likes to wrestle the right kind of girls at the wrong time of the month.
Yeah.
And, of course, Sister Slash, the wrestling nun from hell.
Yeah.
Now,
we
one
also
of my-
had the St. Pauli girl running around at one time.
My favorite wrestler, though, was the original Jesus Christ. And the original Jesus Christ was this wrestler, and we had a $1 million check
That's right.
to anyone in the audience who can prove that he is not the original Jesus Christ. You remember that, Dan?
I remember that. In fact,
If you can prove that he's not Jesus Christ, you got $1 million.
Nobody fucks with the Jesus.
there we go.
Thank you, Angelo.
And he also was accompanied by Mary Magdalene, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct.
yeah.
And then you mentioned Tex Travolta and Killer Cruz, the Scientologist.
Right. We had the Neighborhoods.
The Neighborhoods.
Supreme.
And the Incredibly Strange Brothers, which were our tag team champs, were Chaos and Supreme.
Yeah. Chaos and Supreme.
And you mentioned Cletus the Fetus Kincaid. And the thing that I remember with Cletus the Fetus, the object was the wrestler had this burlap sack in the corner with the live fetus. And he would always stick his opponent's face into the burlap sack, and the fetus would attack it.
Yeah.
And Eric Caden wrestled as D.T. Dumphy, Drunk
Right.
Tank
Well,
Dumphy.
Elron Farrakhan. I wrestled as Elron Farrakhan.
Wrestling is a phrase you can use for what he did.
Because I want to get into L. Ron Farrakhan.
Yeah.
D.T. Dumphy, he lost to a torso of a mannequin.
Oh, yeah.
He lost to a ladder.
A ladder fell on him.
So,
Well,
now you may now.
I wrestled a Ku Klux Klan in a burrito of death match, and the ladder fell on me, and I was inadvertently counted out. And then I wrestled a guy in a wheelchair, which was I aspired for this match. I really wanted a guy in a wheelchair because I wanted. In other words, they can't get the chair through the ropes; he gets counted out. So instead, they rolled the guy into the ring, and I'm like pummeling the guy because it was Eric. And this nurse, the Johnny Legend, hauls off and belts me in the head with a Halliburton, and I start staggering to fall down, and he hits me a second time and catches me on the side of the head with the corner, which was like a gunshot going off in my brain. And I'm laying there on the mat feeling for blood and tissue. And the referee goes, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Fuck no, I'm not all right."
Dan, who won one of our battle royals?
You did one time, but,
Yes.
but you got beat up a lot.
I got beat up, but what
And you
happened
also
is
got sodomized,
I went
too,
into
so
the,
that
yeah,
was
I
the
went
whole
into
thing.
the ring and did the introductions to the battle royal, and didn't get out of the ring in time. So I got in the middle of the action. I got knocked down.
That was the under the top rope. Oh no, under the bottom rope battle.
It was under the bottom, but I laid in the ring through the entire battle royal, knocked out, and as they were all going over and through and out, I was the last one in there. And I remember in the Wrestling Observer, it said Broadway Danny Wolf won the under the was it under the bottom rope battle royal?
Under the bottom rope battle
Yeah.
royal.
Well, the night we did the athletic club, I was one of the first anal asylums. That's where I would interview a new asshole every week, expose a new asshole every week. And I had this masked guy. He was a Nazi wrestler guy, who came in and was asking me all imbecilic questions. And it got worse and worse till I started I really did smack him around and throw him out of the ring.
Well, I think also we should mention to the audience what the basic setup was, because there was a method to this madness, and
Yeah.
that was. It was basically broken up into several about 45-minute sets in the evening, 2 or 3 times.
And music in between with bands like Big Sandy and the Flyboys, and the Bomboras, the Mentors.
The Mentors, yep.
and
Pearl
they
Harbor.
you would basically have a match or two in between, and then we would go back and reset and do something again, and so there was a method to it. But what was interesting was. The fans that would come in would stand right at ringside. They would stand right there by the ring.
There were no seats.
There were no seats
'Cause it was in a
you had to
club.
stand there. It was in a club. One of my most memorable was one time we did do the show in a theater one time around the corner.
Las Palmas Theater.
Las
yeah.
Palmas Theater, and then now I remember when we came out when the show was over, there was actually 2 gangs got into it in the middle of the street, started fighting, and there was gunshots, and that was
Well, this
one
was
of
this was the if you had bought the special package for this show, you got to see the gang fight and the gunshots. That was with the premium package. Otherwise, if you just bought the regular tickets, you just saw the regular.
I remember the
show.
girls that came to that show found out how brave their dates really were that night, because some of those girls were left standing in the middle of the street all by themselves. So.
Well, and also mentioned we had celebrities would come down and wrestlers. I remember Chris Jericho came and watched one of the shows.
Chris
was in the crowd.
Farley came down and jumped up on stage with me and got into the show. He was like up there with me for like 20 minutes.
Chris Farley announced the show with us, and actually I think passed away the next week.
Well,
I don't think it was that
three.
quick.
It was
December.
it was in a
like
month.
a month or two
like
later.
about a
yeah.
month later. And,
Not because of
very
the
sad.
show.
No,
Let's don't.
no. Sage Stallone.
Sylvester, who also passed away.
rest in
There's a
peace. What
theme
great
here.
guy.
There's a theme here, folks.
Louis Spicoli, who also passed away, is gone.
So that's what happens in Incredibly
What
Strange.
about Fred Olin Ray? Did he do any of the wrestling?
No, but he's still alive.
He's still alive.
Yeah.
That's why.
He's
Because he
next
didn't do
in
any of the
line.
wrestling. and Dan, talk a little. I mean, you refereed
Yes.
and you actually co-promoted, and
Yes.
kind of you were the matchmaker. But,
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
it's an interesting dynamic because when Johnny Legend, comes into the picture. I mean,
Here's the situation. Johnny is a mad genius.
Yes.
And what he does is he has in his mind what he wants it to be. But the trouble is sometimes broadcasting that same picture to everyone else is a little difficult. So since we had known Johnny for a while, but since I had worked with him, I would try to narrow down what he wanted. And sometimes he would have this, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then I would say, but what about the little stuff? So he would sometimes give me the little stuff to do, the little matches here or there, or the little things to get the bridge, to cross the bridge to get there. And that's always the sign of true madness, I think, but also true genius at the same time, is that he had this vision, and that was the whole idea. And they would show, and also besides the bands, they would also show movies in the other room. That was another
had
thing.
dealer
they did.
rooms, too.
What's his name came and performed? Ian Whitcomb, the DJ guy, the British guy who had a couple of hits in the 60s. At Moguls, he was in that middle room, and he put on a show, and he had a band, and he sang, and this was before the wrestling show.
There was
But
always something going on.
those shows, what's great about them, and I hope we start doing them again, what's great about it, it's like being at a convention, a show, and a rock and roll show, and a wrestling show, all in one. And you got interviews, you got wrestling, you've got It's Wallace Beery. No, it's all there. I mean, it's really an entertaining.
There's a
evening.
reference to the fans
but
of the day right now.
That's why we were the LA Weekly's pick of the week. Every
time.
single
Every
show,
time.
we were the pick of the week, and it really became this cult
Yeah,
thing
for
to
about
do in LA.
2 or 3 years, we were really kicking ass there. Then the moguls closed down, and it was very hard to find a venue.
And we're going to talk about
what
that
we
in
did.
just a minute. We're going to take a break, folks.
Yes,
we're
I hope
almost
our food
live.
arrives.
Yeah, we're waiting for our food, but it's almost live from Parts Unknown. We're taking a short break. We'll be back in a minute.
Yes, we will.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network, but come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Welcome to Wrestle Time, Big Time Pro Wrestling, Professional Pro Time Wrestling. I'm Vince McMahon, and tonight we will see the patronage of Carlos Colon take on Gorilla Monsoon, in what should be a very interesting match.
That's the best David Brinkley impression I've ever heard.
We're back here on, it's almost live from Parts Unknown. We're coming from the John Lovitz Comedy Club here at
Yes.
Universal Studios City Walk in Hollywood, California.
I look
Broadway
like
Danny
Penn
Wolf.
Gillette.
Sitting
You
with
do,
Joey
actually.
Gaynor and Dan Farron, and of course sitting right there, I point to him, spoiler 58.
Spoiler 58.
Good to see him. Good to see. And we're talking incredibly strange wrestling, or some people also called incredibly strange rock and wrestling.
does that look
We
like?
were all
Penn
part of
Jillette.
this
I don't know,
independent
Penn
promotion
Jillette.
that existed here in the 90s, about 20 years ago in the Los Angeles area.
We did our last show that I remember around 2007 or 8.
It would come back every
at
now and then by
the
popular demand.
Yeah, at the Crash Mansion.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
I don't know why we don't just. Well, I don't know why we're not finding a place to do it. It's one of the best shows. It's a great alternative show to the other wrestling shows, which
Probably
are pretty.
because the other wrestling shows do what we do now.
Hollywood wrestling isn't.
Well, not Hollywood wrestling, but
No.
a lot of. I mean,
Well, a lot of
WWE has
copycats,
done
yeah.
a lot of
Well, yeah,
stuff.
talking
Well,
about that, I mean, we did
borrowed
sort of
a
set
lot of our stuff.
We set the trends for a lot of what you saw in the WCW and WWF.
I
with some of
remember
our
one. It's
characters.
really funny because when you work a while in wrestling, like we all did beforehand, but I had worked in like, traditional wrestling, and in the beginning, it's kind of hard to let go of some of that. You start. You say, well, maybe this is going a little too far. Maybe we're doing whatever. But the thing I always remember was Johnny did that thing that one night where a FedEx box arrived at ringside.
Yes.
And they opened it up. I guess it was a foreign object, and they hit somebody in the head. Why they do that? And then about 3 years later, China gets on the WWE and the Monday Night Raw gets a FedEx box delivered to her at ringside.
I'll give you a great example. Remember a wrestler we created a long time ago called Doink Diggler, the porno clown?
That's my baby. Yeah, that's the one I created.
Remember that? We had a wrestler, Doink Diggler, the
combination
porno
of
clown.
combination of Doink the Clown and Dirk Diggler from Boogie Nights.
Sure. Guess what? Somebody is on the line who was part of Incredibly Strange Wrestling, and it sounds. Could this be Lucky Pierre? Are you on the line? Vandal
I am
Drum.
on the line.
Ah, there
always
he
a
is.
little off, but always on the line.
Vandal.
Could this also be the HIV kid?
This could also be the HIV kid. This could also be the abortionist. This could be Robo Sata, RU-R2000. Who else could I be?
God, I forgot about the abortionist. You were the abortionist.
That was actually, I think, the first
Oh,
Incredibly
Vandal,
Strange-
come on in.
Vandal, can you hold on
Hold
for a
on just a
second?
second, our food's
We have
here.
food delivered
Our
here, so
delivery's
hang on a
here.
second here.
There we go. Thank you
mine
very
is-
Do I get to
much.
listen to
Thank
you,
you.
You get to
Kathy?
listen to us. Thank
Yeah,
you
we
very
get
much.
we get food delivered
Thank
in
you.
here. Oh, wonderful.
That's
You got
really
this
nice
spinach,
there.
Come on.
you got
Sorry you're not
Come
here,
on.
Vandal.
Oh my goodness. This is great.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Introduce yourselves before you leave.
This is Kenny.
That's Kenny.
Yes,
Hello to
Kenny.
Kenny.
This is the lovely
Hello.
Christine. They work here at the John
Hello,
Lovitz Club.
Christine.
They do nothing but take good care of us here.
Thank you.
We'll be.
Thank
we'll
you very
have a little
much.
something
Thank
for
you
you
very
later
much.
out there. Via your.
So
Okay,
fa-
I'm sorry, Vandal. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, The Abortionist was the very first incredibly strange gimmick I did. I mean, my first incredibly strange match was under the RUR 2000 gimmick, but the first actual gimmick I did was when Ron Head and J.R. Benson approached me with the most tasteless gimmick you could think of, The Abortionist. They gave me a bloody smock, a really
I remember that.
gruesome-looking mask to wear, and a coat hanger.
Nice.
And
And Vandal,
my
before
opponent-
before you go on, let's mention also Ron Head, who has worked as a ring announcer, I believe, for Smoky Mountain in the Midwest. J.R. Benson, a very famous independent manager up in San Francisco. And also, you mentioned RUR. A lot of people don't understand where RUR comes from. Me, being a very literate person, can tell you that RUR is the name of a robot that appeared in the very first piece of literature written about a robot. So, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
in Russia.
I
it was,
just-
and it was
I had
a
to.
stage play.
I had to somehow warrant my college education. So go ahead, Vandal.
That's good. That's good. And I remember seeing a photo of the play where all the robots are encircling their creator and about to destroy him. And it was a play that was written in the 1920s. And that photo alone gave me nightmares, and that's what gave rise to the RUR gimmick. So The Abortionist was a new nightmare, and the best part was this was also Physico Nuclear's first incredibly strange gimmick, too, because he was the opponent of The Abortionist, a creation of Johnny Legend called Cletus the Fetus Kincaid.
We talked about him a few minutes ago, of course.
And what was so funny is Physico and I, the best thing that we got out of Johnny Legend's incredibly strange wrestling was, and Dan, I think you can attest to this, a lot of wonderful things about the indie wrestling scene, but one of the things is the drawbacks. There's a lot of guys who have been in the business for maybe 3-4 years and have done shots here and there or just worked the local circuit, fancy themselves veterans, and start to take themselves a little too seriously.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we suffered a little bit of that ourselves in the early 1990s.
We
And
mentioned that just before you in the last segment. I talked about that how difficult it was at one point after coming from traditional wrestling to embrace this different art form. Until like within 3 or 4 years after we started doing this stuff, you would see it on mainstream wrestling on TV.
Exactly. You see what Johnny Legend did? He taught us to loosen up and have fun. I think I was a little excited about the Abortionist gimmick just because it was so twisted. And Physico was a little bit like, okay, so I have to put on this inside-out mask and wear this extra-large T-shirt and these baggy pants, and I'm supposed to be this maniac who can't speak, who brings in this leather, or not a leather bag, a burlap bag that has some undulating item, unknown undulating item inside of it, and I'm supposed to pet it. And, Physico's kind of an introverted guy, and to my amazement, we got in the ring, and that place, it was a transmission room up in San Francisco. The place was sold out with people, like, right up against the ring, drinking heavily. Physico got in there, and suddenly he started just ramming himself into the turnbuckles, running as fast as he could, taking bumps on his own, rubbing his face in the mat, and then tackling me and humping me. And I said, I never thought I would see, the nuclear physicist, a guy who teaches high school, by the way, ring rape me, essentially.
There you go.
And it was really great. I used the coat hanger as a foreign object, gouging at him. And the finish for, every match with Cletus the Fetus, the finish was Johnny would toss Cletus the bag with undulating figure inside of it, and he would stick my face in it, and I would start screaming at the top of my lungs and run to the dressing room in horror. Of course, we never got to see what that undulating creature was inside the bag. I guess it was a fetus that the fetus gave birth to, maybe. We can only speculate.
Also, talk about the HIV kid, which, my gosh, I never forgot the show at Moguls where I think you got up on the ropes and you were spitting in the crowd and they were running.
That was great. That was one of the best things I ever saw.
Oh, yeah. I was the HIV kid.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I'd get in the ring and I would spit at the crowd and then be all grossed out. And then we had a battle royal where I just kind of was in the battle royal real passively. And no, I'm not sorry. It wasn't a battle royal. It was one of Johnny's multi-team tag matches. I think there were like 4 teams wrestling at one. The HIV kid barely wrestled. He just kind of stayed in the corner. Mm-hmm. And it was an elimination match. So when it was down to the last 2 men, HIV kid takes out a blade and slashes his chin and starts trying to bleed all over the other guy. And he runs to the dressing room in horror. So HIV kid wins by countout. The other thing you also are probably thinking of is when the baby bitch Drummond was wrestling the late, great La Femme Nikita Koloff. And his foreign object of choice, baby bitches, was this big green dildo. And when it was time to use it, he would insert the dildo into his mouth and spit what appeared to be a dairy product in the face of his opponent. He also spit it into the audience, who ran in horror.
Well, Vandal, on that lovely the descriptive point, we do have some other callers on the line, so we're going to have to move on if you don't mind. But thank you very much for calling in and sharing us your memories this evening.
Thank you for having me, and keep the show going. This is awesome.
We're going to have you in here soon, by the way. All your delusions, they can all fit into this room, so we're glad to have you soon.
Ever cut my shirt with a scissors?
Say the word, and I'm there. I'm all yours, honey.
Great. Thank you, Vandal Drummond, Lucky Pierre, HIV Kid, and all your other delusions for joining us.
And Angela, let's go to Craze I believe on line 2 there. Craze, are you there?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, another one of our great ISW wrestlers, incredibly strange, Craze.
What's happening,
What's happening, Craze?
Hey, thought I'd stop in and give praise to the old ISW crew.
What are some of your favorite memories from that?
Oh, man. I think most of all just meeting good people. I hate to say, sound sappy, but I think some of the better people in the wrestling business I met was like, Stephon De Leon and Kurt Brown and Physico, all the boys that were actually good people rather than just good workers.
So,
and of course, Johnny Legend.
And of course, Johnny Legend, of course. And
his craziness.
Now, were you did you play any other characters besides Craze?
I did on one show. I played some meth head that messed off some girl's butt. I don't remember the name, but I know I did.
Was that
character.
Something like? It was like an Irish name, like Methadrine Mackenzie or something like that.
It was probably alliteration one way or the other, because that's why all Johnny's characters were.
Like that.
Was there anything?
It was down in Hollywood somewhere.
Was there anything we ever threw at you that you thought about, like, is this a good idea to do, or did you just basically just go for it?
Oh, I just went with it. Come on. Those shows were about just going with it.
Yeah, that's true.
The neighborhoods.
Johnny pretty much let us do whatever we wanted.
Right?
So, if we were doing dives into loaded bars full of people, we knew that whatever crazy ass idea he could come up with, we'd go with.
Well, when I managed you guys, the 2 times I managed you, they were like at conventions, music conventions, and there's nobody there, and you'd win the belts. So there was no.
Exactly. Well, those are good times too.
Yeah.
And talk about the neighborhoods.
Yeah, tell us about the neighborhoods.
Yeah, what's happening with the neighborhoods?
Well, sadly my partner passed away, so that was a great run, man. We had so much fun, and whenever you can go out and raise hell over some kind of crazy racial angle, we were out for it. I mean,
it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so easy to get heat and piss people off. It was a lot of fun. I mean,
great tag team.
Some of the best times.
Yeah. Tell the people who may not be familiar with the neighborhoods what exactly the gimmick was, what you guys did.
Well, way before ECW was on TV here in California, we used to get it on satellite. So we pretty much took the look of the Public Enemy with the promos of the gangsters, and we were pretty much two white guys who actually thought we were black. So we would go out and cut promos on white people. So it was pretty much just, we literally thought we were black, and we would make jokes about, you know, we couldn't get parking spaces, places, or taxi cabs, or, you know, couldn't get breakfast at Denny's because there was a lawsuit way back with Denny's and black people. It was fun.
Did you guys ever
wrestle?
wrestle? Did you guys ever wrestle Supreme and Chaos, who were the Incredibly Strange brothers? All the time, right?
Yeah, for like 2 years straight. Just anywhere and everywhere. We cut our teeth really on wrestling those guys. So, and a lot, you know, besides cut our teeth, hurt our bodies, and broke my jaw, and yeah, you know, Supreme would lay him in on you. That's for sure. Good times. And again, Johnny would just let us just go out and go crazy. I know we wrestled at what was that place down? It was the Hollywood Athletic Club, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. That was a great show. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember us, you know, we went out and, I mean, literally killed fans, like ran people over, and the people there were freaking out. And Johnny's like, oh, they weren't supposed to do it. And literally down the hallway, Johnny comes up behind both of us and goes, that's exactly what I wanted. Great job. And I was like, so, you know, it was fun. He'd back you up even though he knew it was wrong, and it was all about the show. It was a lot of good times, man. I mean, a lot of good times.
A lot of good times indeed. Hopefully we'll be doing them again soon. Bring some guys out of retirement and bring ISW back into the Hollywood area. Craze, thank you for calling in, man.
Anytime, guys. Great talking to you guys.
And we hope to have you here in studio soon, too.
Yeah.
Anytime. You just get a hold of me.
Okay,
Great,
take
thanks.
it easy, man.
Thanks, Craze.
We're going to be taking
later.
another break here, but when we come back, one of the wrestlers he just talked about, one half of the Incredibly Strange Brothers, Supreme, is going to join us when we come back from this short break.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network, but come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's what he
We
said.
are back. It's almost live from Parts Unknown, your weekly wrestling show. Talking ISW, Incredibly Strange Wrestling today for the full hour. Reminiscing, having some great guests. Speaking of great guests, you know who's on the line?
Who?
One half of the Incredibly Strange Brothers, who are our tag team champions, Supreme. Hello, Supreme.
Hello.
Supreme, how the hell are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. The human horror film himself, Supreme. How you doing, man?
King of the Death Match.
The man who's had more thumbtacks in him than Cactus Jack, the Sandman, and Sabu combined.
Wouldn't doubt it.
You know, Supreme, we were just talking to Craze a few minutes ago, and he claims that you laid into him quite a bit, quite stiffly. Is that true?
Well, in the beginning of my career, yeah.
So I got to ask you, one of my favorite memories of Incredibly Strange Wrestling involves you guys, you and Chaos, and I think it might have been the Hoods, actually, was the infamous night at Moguls when I think you refer to a group of porn actresses as a gaggle of porn actresses, but there were a whole bunch of them led by the very famous Sharon Mitchell standing around ringside. And do you remember what you did to them?
Well, all I remember is while we were wrestling, it was tag team with me. We were called the Incredibly Strange Brothers at the time. And we're against the neighborhood, and I remember them untying my shoe, my boot, my wrestling boot. And I told Chaos was like, he looked like he got upset. I was like, don't worry about it. So we're wrestling the match, and then I'm like, they shoot me off, and then they, have them send me outside the ring. So they send me outside the ring. I'm going into the crowd, and at the Incredibly Strange shows, they're right up to the ring. There's no guardrail, there's nothing like that. So I go out in the crowd, and as soon as I'm getting up, I'm just grabbing, boobs, butt. I'm just grabbing whatever I can. And I get up and I just smile, and Chaos just sitting there nodding his head.
But I seem to remember you warned them. You warned them that you were going to jump over the top rope.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe you. They thought it was all just fun wrestling and games. And next thing I know, it was bowling for porn stars.
Next
They
thing
were
you
going
know,
to
there were porn chicks going out on stretches, but they didn't even care. They're used to being on their backs. What's the difference?
I love the bowling for porn stars.
That's right.
But we were saying, Supreme, like ISW became kind of the thing to do in Hollywood. I mean, we had sold out crowds, standing room only. I mean, not all our shows were done at Moguls. We did shows at Club Lingerie, at the Hollywood Athletic Club, at the Second Coming, Crash Mansion, at other locations. But Moguls in Hollywood seemed to kind of be this hot home base. You remember?
Yeah, I love that place. What was it? It was on Schrader, right?
Right. Schrader in Hollywood, exactly.
Yeah. I remember before I became a wrestler, I was kind of in training. I took one of my nephews and we, just to go see a independent show, and it was at Moguls, and I walked because I lived in Hollywood at the time. We just walked there, and it was just incredible. And it was like one of my bigger influences in becoming, professional with the wrestling.
And you know what? It's kind of funny. I think and we've joked about this before. About when you start working in the business, even when you've been around the business for a while, the payoffs are not always that good. But one thing that can never be said about Incredibly Strange was the guys always got paid decent. They always did on Incredibly Strange.
Yeah, no matter what it cost Eric Caden. No, everybody walked away with money. I mean, it was very fair to the wrestlers. You guys put on such. Look, I was just a manager, mouthpiece guy, but you guys you put so much into it that would have been ridiculous and insulting to, ask you to do that for low dough or no money.
And sort of what Supreme said.
We were just so proud of being able to do the shows. It was like it was like the hip Hollywood, and I'm me growing up, being born and raised in Hollywood, and being able to wrestle in Hollywood to me was awesome.
Well, there was also a camaraderie between all the guys. We all knew each other. We had all worked together for a long time. And it really became kind of like a family thing when we all got together and do those. And I mean, we generally all the time now, there are people that say to me, when are you going to do another one? Or the guys that worked on the show say, when are you going to do another one? And I think we have to, because is it the 30th anniversary or coming up close to it, Danny? We were talking earlier.
It would actually be about, 20 year.
Yeah, 20 year.
20-year anniversary.
1994 was one of the first.
Yeah, it's funny, Supreme, you mentioned, like, if someone's trying to picture where we did these shows, picture a nightclub, but basically the ring would be on a floor in a nightclub, and there was it was a bar, but then hundreds of people would stand right around the ring. And then there was a stage where the bands would play.
Able to untie my boots while I'm just standing in the corner.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we were closed down once or twice, either by the bartenders or by the fire marshals or whatever. So I mean, really and truly, we attracted quite a crowd. And actually, and Johnny will talk about this probably a little bit later on. There were some other excursions up to Washington State for a lot of different concerts and whatever. So
yeah, what's your fondest memory? Do you have one memory, Supreme, of ISW?
That's really hard to pick. I mean, it's just, I just love the
Just so
entire
many
thing.
of them. Yeah.
I just love. I probably backstage at one of the shows where I met Nick, Chris Jericho.
Yep.
He was actually at one of the shows. I was talking to him in the back, and Farley, right?
Chris Farley, yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
it.
it
That
was
was
a
it.
week before he passed away. I mean, that was one of our craziest shows. You know, and the thing I loved about Incredibly Strange, it wasn't like, okay, I loved being out there in wrestling, but you said we had the camaraderie and everything like that. But what you guys do realize, me and Chaos, we were like up and comers, and a lot of people at other indie shows we worked, they didn't really like it. And we always had the attitude, or the F you attitude, like, you know, forget you. You got a problem, we should go outside. We always had that thing, but we never had that in Incredibly Strange because everyone just was there for the same reason. It wasn't about an ego. It was about having a good time in wrestling and being able to wrestle and, you know, and do what you love, but not putting yourself over and being cocky and just being a jerk and stuff. And a lot of indies, you know, and that's why all those shows dropped and everything, and you're not talking about the shows, but, you know, and that's why we're talking about this, because, you know, it's something everyone loves to do.
Exactly.
Well, the first show he ever did with Incredibly Strange, Kurt cut my shirt up with the scissors, and I was all mad because my shirt was cut up, and Johnny said, "Don't wear a good shirt."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, wait a minute. This is different. This isn't."
Yep. Well, Supreme, we thank you for calling in. We hope to have you here live in studio soon.
I'd love to.
We have a lot to talk to you about. You had a great career. Hey, if we did another ISW show, would you get back in the ring?
Oh, definitely, of course.
Love to hear that. Well, thank you, Supreme. Thanks for joining us and reminiscing a little bit about ISW. Hope to see you soon.
No, always, anytime, and thank you for having me.
Take it easy, man. Take it
Always
easy.
a pleasure. Thank you.
The great Supreme. Now, on the line is the self-made man, the $1 Million Maniac. He really was the driving force for Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. He also played on the shows with Johnny Legend and his Rockabilly Bastards. Are you on the line, Johnny Legend?
Yeah, since you're spouting off stuff, one-liners that are a quarter of a century old now, I don't know if you realize that, but I'm definitely on the line.
Well, Johnny, we've had a great time talking about the history of ISW and Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. I mean, talking about how we packed moguls every Saturday night. We were the pick of the week in LA Weekly and the shows.
Well, it was Friday night, and we didn't do it every week, but we were sold out, and it was pick of the week in the weekly, and we had a
Once a month.
interesting group of people. I'm just trying to set the record straight as we go along.
Well, we were talking about some of the great wrestlers, and a lot of these were your brainchild. I mean, the Ku Klux Clowns, and of course, Tammy Tampon. She likes to wrestle the right kind of girls at the wrong time of the month, and Sister Slash, the wrestling nun from hell, and Cletus the Fetus Kincaid. I mean, you really had a knack for coming up with some of the most unique wrestlers ever.
Yeah, I agree. I can't argue with that at all because, you know, a lot of these were just festering around in my brain for years, and I've still got a couple hundred that I came up with that haven't made it into the ring yet just because it got a little too full. You know, the Stocking Mooney we had one night with the deprogrammer handling them. There's a whole lot of them, and it's always nice to know that Harley Racist and Go-Go Gomez are still out there somewhere keeping a watchful eye on us even as we leak.
Well, you managed, besides promoting, you managed, I remember, teams like the Colostomy Brothers, Shitbag Shannon, and Slow Drip Dominguez, and you had, of course, Los Hobos, Backpack Mac, and Panhandle Randall.
Mac and Panhandle Randall, yeah.
So who were some of your favorites to manage?
Cletus the Fetus was always great because, you know, there was something living in that bag similar to Jake the Snake Roberts, but you never found out what was in the bag. To this day, you still don't know, and that's going back to 1995. So I thought that was a great thing because when the opponent went into the bag, he either came out pretty much hopelessly insane and just stormed out of the arena screaming and got counted out, or then later on he went through a complete mental transition and became the opposite of what he was before. Like the abortionist went in once and came back out the opposite, whatever the opposite of an abortionist is.
Now, Johnny, you were saying,
lifer, I guess.
You were saying 1995. We were talking earlier that we felt that Incredibly Strange had some of its roots in Hollywood heavyweight wrestling in 1990. But about what was 1995 the year that Incredibly Strange officially started?
Yeah, completely, because I still remember all these things exactly. Yeah, I'm kind of proud of Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling, and we were all involved in both of these these activities. As you may recall, the 1st of January, 1990, they what do they call decriminalized or deregulated?
No, we were talking about that. We talked about that earlier.
California.
You didn't even have a license to run, and we were like basically the first group to run without a license, a promoting license.
Yeah, because we did it with within 2 weeks of the beginning of January. We were there doing our very first show, Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling, which a lot of people later saw as kind of an unconscious prototype for ECW or something, because we brought in a lot of the the Lucha guys that were there. Yeah, do you remember the opening match on Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling on that fateful night on that second or third weekend of January in 1990?
January 19th, I think. I still have the flyer.
Was that Calibre?
Yeah, it was actually, I renamed him Giant Killer, and it was Rey Mysterio Jr., and he was in the opening match and a title match. And so we had the Lucha guys, just like ECW. We were doing hardcore matches, but I called it hardcore with a brain, because we didn't do garbage matches. There was a lot of hardcore going on, particularly with the late great Stephen De Leon and Tim Talltree. But the stuff, there was some kind of thinking added to it. And then we were already doing the outrageous angles like Sister Slash, the Nun from Hell, who got messages from God through the match, and we even tortured Frank Frazier, the veteran referee, going back to
Jason Hervey was showing up at those shows.
He started hearing the messages from God, and they really spooked him. So that was a pretty interesting, a very high work rate show. Actually, we only got sabotaged on that one. It's the same old story. We kind of got screwed at the first venue, and it always sort of boiled down to money and venues. But we came back 5 years later in June with Incredibly Strange Wrestling, starting up in San Francisco, and then we really started pulling out all the stops and doing a little bit of everything. The Lucha mixed with science fiction, mixed with insane characters, and a much better work rate than a lot of people might think.
We did the show the night before Christmas Eve up at Transmission.
Got their start on that, or very close to their start. Matt Hyson was there. I believe Spike Dudley was there in one form or another. Believe it or not, Rikishi worked his very first.
Did he really?
Card. Yeah. He was a security guy, a bouncer basically at a local strip club, I think, and he was learning to wrestle. And they brought him in to wrestle one night. And then I found out years later he became Rikishi. So that's another interesting, odd facts known by few, as Barney Fife used to say.
Well, Johnny, we're going to take our last break. Hold tight. Stick with us. We got a lot to talk about in the world of the Incredibly Strange Wrestling and the world of Johnny Legend. So hold tight, Johnny, and fans will be back in just a minute.
There it is.
Hi, I'm John Lovitz, broadcasting to you from John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City in Hollywood. And I'd like to invite you to come down every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We tape all these great comics at the John Lovitz Comedy Club, and there is no cover charge, and there's no 2-item minimum. Just come on in, get something to eat if you'd like, and enjoy these fabulous new comedians. And you can see them on the John Lovitz Comedy Network, but come down to the taping live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. at the John Lovitz Comedy Club and Podcast Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood.
You think Spoiler 58 likes what you're doing there? What you got in the napkin there, Gainer? We're back, almost live from Parts Unknown. Johnny Legend is on the line. Hey, Johnny, I want to ask you something about the music of Incredibly Strange shows. I mean, you and your band, and Johnny Legend and his Rockabilly Bastards, but there were a lot of great bands on these shows.
Yeah, there were. Nashville Pussy played the shows. a lot of people, I can't remember all of them, but yeah, we had kind of the cream of the LA
we had the Mentors.
alternative groups playing there, the Go Nuts, some of the key rockabilly people were there.
Big
Mike
Sandy.
was there as often as possible. I'm sure I'm forgetting. And back on when we did Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling, we had L7, which was, at the time was, one of the #1 all-girl groups in the entire country. And so, yeah, we had some pretty great music. And up in San Francisco, they had some other fairly infamous people involved. So, yeah, there's been a lot of interesting music over the years. And the theme songs and everything were pretty good, too.
Yeah, it's funny. Joey's got one of our flyers framed here from one of the shows, one of the posters from Moguls. Who are some of the bands there, Joey?
We got the Bomboras, the Cyclone Rangers, the Fuzz Tones, Johnny Legend and the Rockabilly Bastards, Big Sandy and the Flyboys, the Bomboras.
Now, see, they're still very famous to this day. 15 or whatever years later it is, maybe 17, and they're still touring the world, and they come up here at Strokeland, where I live now. They're up here pretty often.
The Mentors with Il Duce, that was quite a
now,
frightening.
they were famous, of course. Il Duce managed to kill himself, but
he walked in front of a train to prove it was coming on time.
Yeah, no, there's a guy. If ever a guy belonged in the ring, it was El Duce. But what can I say?
Well, if you remember the show we did at the Transmission Club in '95, the night before Christmas Eve, after the show,
El Duce was there. With his wang hanging out.
Right, and after the show, he walked around in black tights with a big dildo on his hanging out of his.
Exactly.
Walking around. Hey, how you doing? Can I get a beer? Can I get another beer? Hey, Johnny, I got some film projects. It was crazy. That was insane. Great show, though. Tony Clifton was at that show.
I don't even know what the format is.
What's that? This show.
I mean, how much airtime do we have? Are you about to go off, or?
Oh, we got another 4 or 5 hours. Don't worry about it.
No, we got about another 10 minutes, Johnny.
Yeah, we got time.
Okay, well, see, that's reality checking in. That's good to know.
No, Johnny, when you sat down and started putting these shows together, how did you basically structure an Incredibly Strange show? How did you put it together?
Well, I like to say I lost 10 years of my life every time I did one of these shows, and I ran out of the 10 years after about 2 centuries worth. But as you know, it was mathematically almost an impossible thing, because a normal club with 4 bands, say, playing on a given night barely fits in the 4 bands, even if they're always running late and they got a curfew. And we're in California doing these shows, so we've got to deal with a curfew. Now we're suddenly doing the same thing, 4 bands and 10 wrestling matches, and either one of those takes up an entire night. Wrestling shows, they always run an hour or 2 late, and they don't usually do 10 matches. So mathematically, what we were doing was impossible. So from a logistics standpoint, that kind of structuring, I just had to sit down and work it out like a big math puzzle, where each band had to follow an exact time frame in terms of how long they could play. We knew that when they got to their last song, we could get the wrestlers out to the ring and be ready to hit with the match and whatever angle we were doing almost before the band ended. And then the next band knew what the final match was going to be, so they could start setting up while the match was going on. And I had to remind them constantly they couldn't do guitar fills and drum little licks and things. They had to kind of get ready to play, but kind of quietly, so we could finish up the wrestling thing. And just by going bam, 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 we would get through the night and meet the curfew, doing everything we just described.
I'll tell you.
Aside from that, it was all, just pure genius coming up with wrestlers and angles and having to do things on the fly when people didn't show up and that type of thing.
And Johnny, how did they wind up going up to Lollapalooza?
That was something I came up with after the very first San Francisco show. We'd only done the one show, the very first one at the. I think it was because the show Mr. Gaynor was talking about with the Christmas show was actually at another club. I believe the Trocadero that held 900 to 1,000 people.
Was it. Right. Because they had the guy with the flamethrower and everything.
Transmission for that one, but we'd only done the one show, and I forget what had happened, but I'd run into Perry Farrell years earlier. When he was buying some 16mm projectors and like that. And I said, this thing's so cutting edge, we got to get this in the Lollapalooza. I know it's coming up in a month or so. It's hopelessly too late to do it. But I did one of my old things where I got somebody on the phone, and they said, Johnny, we're completely maxed out. We're overbooked. We've gone through the entire budget. And I just went bam, bam. I just kept hammering at the guy saying, you guys call yourself cutting edge. You say you're on top of everything. This is by a year from now, this thing's going to be ancient history, and you're going to miss the boat. I said, I understand you got no more money. We'll just have to finesse it, which we did. You know, we basically had to just get 30 people there and a ring and everything else up to the state of Washington and two bands, Foreign Object and my band, to do the show in little 30, 45-minute increments. So, yeah, that was another logistically insane thing. But I finally got the guy to agree to it. He said, I may be crazy. We only did the Washington show and the Irvine show, basically. They couldn't fit us in going. I don't think we would have lived if we tried to go on the road with Lollapalooza. But doing it twice and doing it successfully was pretty astounding because it was set up before we ever even did the second show in San Francisco. So that's what happened there. Sometimes I get on the phone and I just do not, I'm like a pit bull. I just won't back down.
Now, some people might be confused. Oh, there's the pit bull now. Some people might be confused because there actually was a break. There was another incredibly strange group, right, that ran in San Francisco in Northern California.
They were a bunch of
There
phonies.
were those complete scavengers and idiots who basically
Scumbags,
worked at the
gypsies,
club where we
tramps,
started.
thieves.
One of them got us the venue in the first place, and they basically, their whole idea was just to basically steal the show. I don't know how else to put it
Pigs.
politely. And they finally, one night it all
Swine.
came to a head, and the wrestlers were all there really pissed off at the owner of the club and them, and they were talking about holding people out the window and maybe dropping them. And I said, you know what, this was early '96, and I said, I'm walking out of here tonight, and I'm never coming back. I said, I'll just do the show in L.A., and it'll be great. I said, a lot of you guys are going to come back here because that's the nature of wrestling. And a lot of them did. They went back to, when these other people were doing it, and they all started calling me, saying, oh, these guys are assholes. They don't know what they're doing. They're giving people tortillas to throw at the wrestlers. And I said, I warned you guys, don't go back there. They're a bunch of morons. They don't know what they're doing. We even changed the name of the show slightly in L.A. to Incredibly Strange Rock and Roll Wrestling, to avoid the stink of what they were doing in San Francisco.
That's right.
And the funny thing is they could have changed one or two words, because the one thing I said, you can't copyright the idea of having music and wrestling together at a club. It's just too broad a category. But by stealing the name, and also lots of times they advertised all of our wrestlers who weren't even on their shows, you may remember. Pat Howard one night read them the riot act because they were advertising all of our guys, as being on the show, and none of them were. So it was just one of those things. Like I say, sometimes life's too short, but I got out of there, and they kept it going for years. Now they've completely, pretty much vanished. One of them I still know. He moved to another state, and the main bullfrog girl that was involved, she's kind of vanished from the landscape or the face of the earth. So they're completely.
I want the public to know that I had nothing to do with that, no matter what the allegations were, will be, or possibly still are.
And Johnny, talk a little bit about Moguls. I mean, Moguls in Hollywood was the home base for Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. Tell the people out there.
That was a really great setup there. I mean, we basically had to sell out the place to break even, but it's still, we sold it out on almost every show, and it was just the right size where we could fit the ring in, still have the stage, and still have 200 or 300 people fit in, which is what you need for a show like this, And actually, once again, we didn't actually burn our bridges or anything. Moguls was having a constant battle with the local police, and the neighbors were always after the place. And finally, they just lost their lease, or somebody else took over the building, and all of us, including the managers and waitresses and everybody, just had to leave. So that's finally what did happen to Moguls. You remember we did that one last big show at the Hollywood Athletic Club, which was very huge and very successful. And basically what happened is we just ran out of venues over the years. We didn't really run out of people or energy or anything else. It's just the same old story. Some places like the El Rey Theater and like that were just too big and too expensive, and the other clubs were too small to fit the event. So it's kind of a tricky business. We did do the lingerie one time with Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling,
right.
And as you know, we fit Mondo Guerrero's ring in there with about 2.5 micro inches to spare. So
that was the tell that story though, Johnny, real quick, about Conan having to leave. That's one of my favorite stories. Conan having to catch a flight and what we wound up doing to get him out of there. It's storyline.
Oh, are you talking the Conan story?
Yeah.
Okay, because your voice was cutting out there a little.
sorry about that.
Now, that was really funny because Conan had to leave that night. It was a Sunday night. Unfortunately, it was the night The Simpsons premiered, which kept about 50 or 100 people at home, if you can believe people were that stupid back in 1990. But anyway, Conan had to get on a plane to fly to Kuwait to get a whole bunch of money from some insane dictator or something there who thought he was a wrestler and would fly wrestlers over and all that. So Conan had a flight at something like 10 o'clock or 10:30 that night on the night we did the show. So we had to structure the whole early show, and he was Chavo Guerrero was our first Hollywood heavyweight champion, and Conan had come close, and Conan was also feuding with Tall Trees, and Ray Jr. was also on that show. And so we had to come up with this whole angle where Conan and Tall Tree literally, got into a huge, a real rumble. And they rolled right out of the ring on into the sidewalk in front of the club and around into the parking lot. They just took it into the parking lot, and we had a cab there waiting to rush Conan to the airport. So we stopped the fight. Conan jumped in the cab, sweating like a pig, went straight to LAX, never took a shower, pulled his clothes out, got dressed, got on the plane, and flew to Kuwait all the same night.
And that was actually I remember they were wrestling on Sunset Boulevard.
Well, yeah, that's where the club was. It was back then. It was the Club Lingerie. It was pretty famous, and the front of the club, the sidewalk was right there on Sunset. In the eyes of the world. So that was quite an interesting evening.
Johnny, does video still exist? I seem to remember at one point video existed of that moment. Is that still around, do you think?
I've got the original. I hope I still have the original. It might have been a Super VHS from my old camera of that entire show in the Raw. I forget who filmed it, but we had that show. That was the night we had Sister Slash again in a Lumberjacks Battle Royale. We had a whole lot of different angles that night. Let's see, we had Chavo and I thought it seems like we had two Guerreros that night.
We had Chavo and Mondo.
Oh, yeah, we had Chavo and Mondo. Finally, we're both there. We had the guy. Well, I won't keep going into the personnel, but yeah, and that was the famous night Jason Hervey got involved.
Yeah, he was.
And he got involved in the match between the great Louis Spicoli and Ricky Powerbomb Ataki.
Yeah, he was real.
And I was managing one, and Hervey was managing the other, and
he was real pals.
That was the first time Hervey was really allowed to not just sit ringside like he did at WCW as some kind of celebrity judge or something, but he actually got in and got physical and had kind of a fight going with Handsome Harry, who was our commissioner, and he did a whole lot of
Handsome Harry! Hey!
Yeah.
Hey, if Joe Palumbo lets me wrestle for free, but I have the belt, I'll take the belt.
Gainer's
he lets me wrestle for free.
Out there in some,
Alex and Harry, one of the greatest conversations I've ever heard.
Gainer.
Hey, Johnny, you see how they go?
Buddha's back and getting a Lifetime Achievement or Retired Wrestler Award at the upcoming Cauliflower.
Hey, Johnny, you see how they go nuts when that Hogan comes down the aisle? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that guy?
That's more obscure than the one-liners Lawler comes up with.
Well, what's so funny is that was the guy that no matter when he'd see us, we'd do a show or something, and we'd show up at that... what was that? The Philadelphia?
He managed a restaurant, and then they let him manage wrestlers in Maywood in a mask. So yeah, Maywood's another whole universe.
That was people there. They didn't know about anything but Maywood wrestling. Hogan didn't matter. Nothing mattered.
They thought it was network television.
Yeah.
It was the restaurant owners there would bring us in and give us anything we wanted to eat because they saw us on TV.
Yeah.
And they thought it was just like Johnny Carson.
Yeah, it was like what Maywood, Cudahy, and those three little towns. It's like Twilight Zone.
Yeah, Downey's another one. Yeah.
Johnny, I want to mention we did mention him in passing our good friend the late Stephen De Leon with Foreign Object, his band. One of my favorite memories, you just jogged my memory a while ago, was at the Las Palmas Theater when we were doing a show there, and Foreign Object was playing, and right before we came on, Screech from Saved by the Bell had his own little pitiful band there. And and we were trying to get the show going, and they were striking their instruments and just talking whatever during our show. So we came outside, and there was the alleyway had a gate, and the gate was closed. And
Right.
Stefan and Foreign Object were out there screaming, and reaching through the gate, threatening like they were going to kill them. And they were going to kill them. And Screech and his band got so scared they jumped in the van, drove off down the street. And I walked over to Stefan and said, Stefan, what would have happened, if they had the gate hadn't been here? And Stefan looked at me and he pushed on the gate, and the gate was unlocked, and it pushed all the way open again. So at any moment they could have run out there.
Pushing on the gate like he was ready to kill him.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Johnny, why don't you let the people know what you're up to now, what you're doing, and how they can get in touch with you or buy some of your fine products?
Oh, yeah, because I've still got everything and even more, and I think all of you guys have been getting my incredible YouTube collections I've been putting together over the last 3 or 4 months. I've done 25 of them now, believe it or not, and I've got a Major Blassie one coming up and an upgraded Tor Johnson and a Gorgeous George one all coming up, so that's pretty interesting. But first, just so everyone knows, you can always reach me. I prefer direct Facebook. I've got 1,000 friend requests pending. Just email me anytime, JohnnyLegendRocks@gmail.com. That's JohnnyLegendRocks@gmail.com. It's real easy. And if you can't find it, look on Facebook. I've also got a page called Johnny Legend Presents. It's got my email address. And I've still got like my wrestling DVD special, 7 or 8 DVDs for next to nothing.
What's
that's
up
like
with the Andy
Camp,
DVD?
Rock and Roll Wrestling, all the top. I'm from
Serious?
Hollywood, Breakfast with Blassie. All of my wrestling DVDs for one low price. I'm doing these shows up here. I don't know if you know about this. Next month, May 17th, I'm doing WrestleFest, which is a yearly show they do in the city of Newark. That's Newark in Northern California. Next month, I'll be there along with Ric Flair, Rock and Roll Express, Scott Hall, the Godfather, heavy name dropping. And
I hope
the
they
great
have
thing
plenty
is
of EMTs there.
What's that?
I hope they have plenty of EMTs, because those guys are a little old. But no, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
And Johnny,
I'm the young kid on the block. I mean, what I love is I've reached kind of like the second B level of veteran has-beenery. I was there last year, and they've got the top name guys, Roddy Piper, RVD, Terry Funk, Bret Hart, if you can believe it. They all show up at this thing. And they get a special thing where they come out at an exact time, and people line up and pay $10 or $15. Then there's all the rest of us, and I'm now in the same league as Honky Tonk Man, Virgil, Lanny Poffo, all these other guys. And I'm in that category, and I actually sold a ton of stuff.
Cool.
I sold 4 times as much merchandise as Eric Caden for the first time in 30-plus years.
That's good to find out, Eric.
I'm not selling wrestling stuff. I'm selling my DVDs.
But speaking of DVDs, I got a note from Lynn a while back about Andy Kaufman DVD, and there's some footage. There was stuff on there with me refereeing for him and everything. Have you heard anything about that? Do you know anything about that?
No, that's some other select stuff that she has. I just do the Breakfast with Blassie with 3 hours of bonuses. That's all my footage. And then we've got I'm from Hollywood. That's her version with all the bonuses. So she's got a bunch of other Andy stuff that she deals with mail order and like that. So I can't.
Yeah, because I got to contact her because she had asked me about using me on the deal. I said sure. I mean, Andy was my friend. I don't care.
Yeah, I can't give you a straight answer on that. I am working with a good friend Kevin Sean Michaels, who's working on a new thing about all these Andy Kaufman fanatics. I've been trying to convince him just to call it Fan Addicts. FAN space ADDICTS.
I've got a music show here at the John Lovitz Club every Wednesday night. Preston Smith's been coming down, really great players. It's a blues jam, and I have word that Tony Clifton is going to make an appearance in the next 4 to 5 weeks. So I thought I'd fill you in on that.
Well, that's good. Well, anyway, like I said, I'm doing that WrestleFest next month. I'm touring Finland again. I was just there in February, and I'm going back in June. Believe it or not, I have a new album coming out over there on a major label. They still put out CDs and vinyl. I've got a great band. I'm getting sold. I'm doing sold-out shows, and then I'm branching out to Norway and Sweden and all these.
Well, you're
other
like
countries.
the Ted Nugent of the Netherlands.
Yeah, you could say that. Only I'm not a total wreck or a has-been or a crank or a nutcase. You know.
No. I was just.
I'm as spry as a spring chicken, and I do 80, 90-minute concerts until the band is these kids that are a third my age are passing out, and the promoters are coming up saying, Johnny, we got to wrap it up. We didn't think you were going to go that long.
Well, every year I get a residual check from the Netherlands for about $12 or $15 because everything I've ever been on seems to run there all the time. So I don't know if I have a following in the Netherlands or it's just coincidental, but You'll be
I
a
don't know if
smash
follow
there.
is the right word over there.
Hey, John, one last question for you, though. Any chance that Incredibly Strange could ever return? At least next year is going to be, we figure, the 20th anniversary. We feel there should be something.
I agree. You know, I keep saying I'm always gung ho about it. It always boils down to logistics. It's the venue, the money, and that type of thing. You know, somehow the money has to show up. We have to find the right venue. You have to get the ring, and there are just certain realities to the show that have to be taken care of. That's the thing. We could do it up here again too, because these people are totally missing in action, and we were actually getting sometimes 900 to 1,000 people up here. So where I live now is wide open. You know, there's Hood Slam. I've also been working with the Hood Slam people from time to time, and they readily admit that they're a bastardized grandchild of Incredibly Strange Wrestling, and they put on really interesting shows with a lot of crazy characters. They get 700-800 people once a month at their shows right here in Oakland. So that's kind of encouraging, you know. So if anybody can figure out the way to do it and get the venue and figure out a way to finance it.
Yeah, it's called making
I'm all
phone
for it.
calls.
Well, Johnny, we thank you for stopping in and reminiscing with
what we
us
need to
about
do.
Incredibly Strange Rock and Wrestling. And the next time you're in L.A., we'd love to have you here live because I'd really like to talk to you about My Breakfast with Blassie and Andy Kaufman.
All the great stuff.
There's a lot more to talk to you about. So
We got a long
No,
history,
we
my
just
friend.
barely
And
scratched the surface, and you scratch my back, I'll break yours. So I agree with you completely.
what was your line, Johnny? Was it stand up and be counted or sit down and get mounted?
You just
No, stand up and be counted, or lay back and be mounted.
There we go. I want to get exact. Well, thank you, Johnny Legend.
Johnny.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Way before these feminists, you go, girl, you go, girl. I say you go, girl, and don't forget the wife, goddammit.
Well, that was Johnny Legend. Thanks for stopping in.
Legend,
This
the
was
one
a
and
great
only.
episode talking
It was.
ISW with Dan Farron, and Joey Gaynor.
Joey Alron Farrakhan Gaynor, ISW Wrestling.
And there he is right there, spoiler 58.
Spoiler 58. And let me explain something to you people. The belt belongs right here. There is nothing else you need to know other than the championship belt right here. It's what? What?
Is there a lady you wanted to...
Shut up, lady!
Oh, come on.
Shut up at home. I can hear you. Shut up! You shut your mouth in front of greatness.
That's it. We'll see you next time. Almost live from Parts Unknown.